Welcome, everyone. My name is Kimberly Bradley. I'm the Conversations Curator at Art Basel Miami Beach. And thank you so much for coming out today to hear about the worlds of the three artists on stage. Right here to my direct left is Paul McCarthy. In the center is Jill Mulleady, Harmony Korine, and the panel is, of course, moderated by none other than Ulrich Obrist. Let's give everyone a big round of applause. And enjoy the conversation.
Thank you so much for the introduction, and thank you all so much for being here. I want to thank Art Basel, Noah Horowitz, Vincenzo De Bellis, Bridget Finn, Colin Milliard, Kimberly Bradley, Jess Davis Molloy, the amazing team for organizing these conversations. And of course, thank our amazing panelists, Paul McCarthy, Jill Mulleady, and Harmony Korine. Please give them a very warm welcome. And it's really a dream come true that we can do this panel. We've been talking with Harmony since last year about our dream panel, and it's great that you all could make it. And we thought today to focus on world building, kind of worlds that did not exist before, which you create, but also in a way on what we discussed with Harmony yesterday, with Jill and Paul also yesterday and this morning, this idea of post-film, the idea of kind of, at this moment in time, with AI, but also above all with video games, kind of new formats developing for which we need to find language, maybe neologism, how we call it, how we're going to name these post-films. And I kind of want to begin, Harmony, with asking you this question about ways beyond film, because you early on, already with Spring Break, because I remember at the time we did a conversation, you mentioned that this has so much to do with video games. And last year, when we had a conversation, you really said that you're no longer really interested in doing film. It's now gone elsewhere. You've created a whole studio here in Miami with many practitioners from different fields of technology called Edgelord, where you produce many, many different things. So it would be great to hear a little bit about this, about how you, about the vision of, creating Edgelord and ways beyond film.
I like this microphone. Style is good. It's Britney Spears. Yeah, I think it's weird hearing your voice. I think. What was the question again?
Edgelord, post.
Oh, okay, yeah. I think I've been. We're trying to get to a place of creating things, or I've been trying to get to a place for a long time that kind of goes beyond like what I would say is like a simple articulation or an explanation or this idea of what things are about, and kind of push entertainment and art and kind into this a direction that's closer to like a feeling or something that's more sensory and a kind of what I would say like a post-articulation, which is really just about like a immersive feeling. And so I started to notice last couple of years that everything was starting to have, there was like a linearity, and that there was no real, for me, there was this idea of like a hierarchy within film or, within art or entertainment or like, movies as the predominant or like the dominant form of entertainment started to seemed not true to me. And I was playing a lot of video games and watching what my kids were doing and the way that they were reacting to the world, and it started to all just start to feel in some ways like the same, like it was all part of this one thing. And so yes, this last couple of years, like we've pretty much been devoted to kind of leaning into this idea and like trying to see what comes after kind of like linear entertainment and veers into something that's more, it's like the end of something and then the beginning of something else.
And it leads to a trilogy. one film has been released, and then there is actually three sort of post films in that sense. There is Twinkle Twinkle, which is basically a recent project, and Baby Invasion, which is both a film and a video game. Can you tell us about this trilogy? Because that's one of the things which happened at Edgelord,
we made these three films. We started this company called Edgelord, which really is in a lot of ways, it's a company, it's like a design collective, but it's based in, a lot of it's based in technology, but the technology that they're building and that they're using is what we're using to create a lot of the films and the advertising and the art, and then it's the first time in my life, I've always been interested in technology, but it's the first time where it ever really, we're starting to get to a point now where it feels like it really starting to parallel like my dreams and the ability to build worlds. And so then you start to think like, what is a movie? Why is a movie 2 hours long and have a beginning, middle, and end? Maybe something we're trying to create things that are more, maybe it's like an experience, maybe the movie doesn't end. We're making a horror movie right now. We've like developed this kind of tech around it, but we're making a horror film now that like it takes place in your house. You know, the characters come from under your bed and out of your closets, and like you interact with them. But it's like there's narrative to it, but it's something else. So a lot of it's like exploring that, yeah. So we have those three things about to come out this year.
And you and Paul have known each other for a long time, and I think 30 years or something?
Yes, I was a kid, like 30 years, yeah.
And I remember there was a conversation where you and Paul discussed about films, and basically, Paul, you and Harmony discussed there that all your films are really one whole, in a way. It's like, and you, of course, similar to Harmony, have recently started to kind of do post-film. You sent me links to hundreds and hundreds of AI films. I spent hours looking at them, and I think there are even more hundreds of thousands of images you also made. You also bring in drawings into AI. Can you tell us a little bit about, first of all, this idea of all your films being a whole, what you discussed with Harmony, but then also how you brought in AI into the mix and technology?
I was thinking about what Harmony was saying and starting a type of studio, and I think years ago I sort of, being in California, sort of thought of this idea. At one point I was working in Hollywood, so there was this thing about being in a film set or being in a sound stage. And I had this kind of nutty idea, but no money to do it. It was just like, how could I make a dysfunctional sound stage or film studio as an art studio? And I think to some degree it happened, and so this thing of building sets and filming in sets or performing in sets with other people, and it was a lot about that. It was a lot about performing, and I think over over a period of the last 15 years or something like that, I don't know, we probably shot like, 200 terabytes of video, and more than we can ever edit. And one thing led to the other. So it's true that it's like one big video. And I agree, I don't understand the 1.5 hour, 2.5 hour film attitude, like a film for 36 hours seems reasonable. And then I started working with different people in the last, 5 or 6 years. I've been working with a woman in Berlin, Lilla Stangenberg, and we started to do a remake of Night Porter, a Lillian Cabani film. And that, which is a film about a young girl in a concentration camp and who starts an affair with a Nazi officer, a doctor. But we finished that, and at the end they commit suicide. And we were trying to figure out how to commit suicide, and somehow we had this idea of going up in the mountains and committing suicide in the mountains up above Los Angeles. And I sort of said, oh yeah, like Adam and Eve. and that's A and an E, and then that led to, what about Adolf Hitler and Eva Braun? And so for the last 4 years, we've been shooting these films as Adolf Hitler and Eva Braun, but not Adolf Hitler, a German. Adolf Hitler is an American, because I'm not German. And Eva is, Lilith is German, so she changed to Marilyn Monroe. So it's a German pretending to be an American and an American pretending to be a German, and them as archetypes of the humans, So it's a kind of view of a male and a female as an archetype of humanity. And then also it's Adam and Eve, and it's just all coming off of this thing of A and E, the letters A and E. It migrates like that. It's about migration. And at some point, and during that time, I think we've done 100 performances that are 2 to 4 hours long. So it's kind of a series. The idea of a series seemed interesting because it's like adapting something from media, from normality, and using that idea of a series. And so it's the idea of a series. And then we made drawings together as these characters. And of course, we dress as the characters, but we're not literally trying to mimic whoever Adolf Hitler is or Marilyn Monroe. It's not about that. And in that came, I started doing AI stuff, and it was mostly a shock. I found AI a shock. And in that the way we're doing it, it can produce thousands of images in a very, very quick time, and completely altering the frame. And I think that AI, and also the issue of streaming is interesting. So, I don't know, there you go.
Thank you, and that really leads us to you, Jill, because you have also very strongly experimented with this non-linearity. Harmony and Paul has been describing. You've worked with technology, a collaboration at Luma with Neil Beluffa is one example. And I was reading here about For Me Time with Fear, Losing You, kind of conjuring up also memory, sort of connecting memory to that. Can you talk a little bit about these experiments and how you bring in AI and how you relate to this idea of post-film?
Hello. Well, I'm actually pretty lazy. That's why I'm a painter, and I don't do films. And when I did these collaborations, it's because someone else is going to do the work of putting everything into a machine, because I actually don't need anything else than a canvas somehow. But I was like, yes, let's play, because at the same time, it's like what we have now. And I don't think there was any result, and that's actually what's interesting, that it's like moving, and it's about actually like taking this new form of language and learn how to use it, because we don't want to be controlled, but we want to actually like know what's going on. The idea of post-film, what can we do? I mean, the films that exist already, and it's such a huge form. It's almost like, for me, it's what I think in film terms. When I prefer sometimes to look at films than to look at paintings, or it's the way how I like to think. But maybe like the whole system is a bit too much. So if we can like make new things that are moving ahead from what already exists.
And can you talk a bit about what you just did with Dario Argento? Because it's interesting that you kind of revisited Dario Argento and created, there's an exhibition also you did in Rome, which was inspired by that.
I mean, ideally, I would like to play in one of his movies. I'm trying to convince him I said I can kill or I can die. It's kind of like I love the way how he creates this image of women. It's like how he constructs the sacred, most beautiful woman, and then just chops it. And there's this vacuum there's an emotion coming from there. So I met him and I did an interview to him about Suspiria, of how he made Suspiria, because that's his favorite film. And and I also made a portrait of him.
And of course, that brings us also to the question of horror. Albert Oehlen, who is doing also films right now, has been saying there's such a interest right now in horror films. It's also interesting that here at the fair, H.R. Giger is present, with some of the monsters. Obviously, it's a childhood memory for me because I had met H.R. Giger in Zurich when I was a kid, growing up there. And yesterday in the studio, there is also a lot of horror moments in your work, no? In the new films. Can you talk about that, Hamlet?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not even that interested in films or movies. I think I don't really care about them anymore, to be honest. But I think specifically horror. I think horror is the only genre that lets you. The reason it has such an appeal is because the only genre that lets you be transgressive. It's like the only thing that it's similar in some ways to rap music, or in that it's always kind of changing, evolving. The concept of horror is, it means different things to different people. And you have subgenres within horror, and then in truth, it's kids like to be scared. So it's one of the things that
There's adrenaline also.
It's like a test of, but then it's I'll go on X and I see horror. So it's a lot of, what is horror?
There's something about fictions that I think horror is it's very close to the idea of fiction, because sometimes the horror comes when we actually repress something that we can't talk, and it's very real, but we're going to just twist it in with this image that is extreme, actually, and it has nothing to do with the reality somehow. But the opposite.
And Paul, we discussed this at breakfast this morning, and basically Jill said, that horror is maybe the urge to make a fiction of something you can't say otherwise. What is horror for you?
I don't know whether horror, I don't use the word too much, or I don't think about it too much, because maybe in some ways it's like a genre. I think one of the things I've been trying to do is create, for a while I was creating these human dummies, like making a live cast, making a rubber cast. And it was all about amputation. So there's the subject of brutality. Is it horror? It's associated with horror films, but the subject of the destruction of the destruction of the human body, and the subject of the interior of the physical body, and that is, that's been in the work for a long time. Is it horror? Is it scary? The association of scary and the setup of the setup in horror movies to set you up. I don't think I'm not interested in that narrative. In fact, coming out of being an artist, whatever that means, making physical things, objects and drawings and stuff like that. Narrative isn't so interesting to me. Yeah, there's a beginning and the end, but I think in the pieces I've made, it was a thing in a Fassbinder movie, in Alexanderplatz, the character's on the ground under the table and they're having sex, the big character, and he bites her and she freaks out. And then he says, well, that's my way. And I always thought that was really interesting, like somehow there's the thing of repeating certain kinds of actions, which I think are associated with trauma. But in a death spiral, you never get out of the trauma, so it just becomes your way. And part of the way is amputation. Is it horror? I don't know. I don't really care.
Now, one thing we also wanted to talk about, and we see that also in the images, is that you all work with post-film, but you all also continue to paint. And it's interesting because, of course, our last conversation, Harmony, was about agro-drift, where you said that it's post-film is also a situation where you no longer have a script, because you began as a script writer originally and wrote lots of movie scripts, and that's kind of gone. And you said it's image obsessed. It's all image based, and there is this kind of almost double practice. You were describing the kind of studio, the Edge Art studio we visited yesterday, where you have basically 60 people. It's almost like a factory, But then you have a second studio I visited last year in Miami, where you're really alone and you make painting. And I think it's really fascinating that there is this double. Maybe it's good to talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, it's just really fun time to create right now. It's probably the most, I've never experienced anything like what's happening. And so there's obviously, I mean, for me, there's working with animators, VFX, and coders, hackers, and graphic designers, and creating worlds and games and things that really, it's such a quick pace now, and that gives me a lot of satisfaction. And it's really like exploring. It's really getting wild. We're experimenting with things that are based just in thought. The idea of doing thought to image with just no prompts, just creating thoughts that then become image, and then the reverse of that, which is just putting image into your mind, basically, which is basically like digital drugs. So we're like, anyway, it gets pretty sci-fi in some ways. The painting is more singular, is more. It's nice because it's like. It's a more kind of solitary thing. I think they both kind of, they feed off each other. But it's all, I always said since the beginning, as I was a kid, it's all really just the same. It's like Charles and Ray Eames used to talk about this idea of like a unified aesthetic. It really is just, it's kind of all part of the same vision. And even, talking about AI and tech right now, that they're really they mean different things to different people. So it's like an existentialist threat to this person, or to this person, it's really just another paintbrush. And nobody really knows because it's not defined and it's changing every day. And what the world looks like right now, it's not going to look like that in a year, and in 5 years, it's completely the way that you perceive things, and the ability to create, and this idea of reality and what's real and post-reality. And does it any of it matter? And are we even alive, or is this all like a simulation? And if it's a simulation, do we know the people who coded the simulation? Because I think I do.
And Jill, what about you? Can you talk about, Harmony yesterday talked about this idea that there's a freedom in painting, because all other aspects require spending a lot of time with other people. And of course, your work, you bring in people into your work as well. You have dialogues with people, but then you're alone in the studio. Can you talk a little bit about what in this sort of post-film environment painting is for you?
What sort of post?
What in this post-film environment we're discussing, painting is for you, because you keep returning to painting.
Yeah, I mean, I actually think painting is going to save us. Because there is we don't need anything. It's when I was saying that I sometimes I teach and I talk to students who are like very young, 18, 19, 20, and the way they relate to painting is still very fresh. And I want to see. I also have a daughter, and the way when she paints, the way how the whole body is connected to something, that it's free, because it's not related to the system, and it's not related to an AI engine that is taking anything from us, or the Bitcoin that it's machines. And so I have to say that there's something very sustainable about painting, and it's very pure. And I think we, at the end of the day, it can connect all of us at the same time with some sort of invisible thing. And I'm thinking about your last film. I saw I don't remember the name, the one with the colors.
Agrodrift?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I immediately connected with this idea of the infra-thin thing,
Mm-hmm.
where it's at the end we're trying to capture something that is invisible.
Mm-hmm.
And how do you do that with film? And I was like, oh yeah, because it's like the temperature of the body, which
Mm-hmm.
actually comes from emotions, because
Mm-hmm.
when there's two characters that they're going to kiss, suddenly it becomes red.
Mm-hmm.
And that was
Yeah, you're capturing souls.
you capture the soul, and
yeah.
that's something that it comes also from painting. One German expressionism or Munch, the character is jealous and he turns green, and those things, I think it's what actually makes us special and human, and that's what at the end of the day, I don't know what technology can.
But painting
do
school,
that.
there is it's also because there's rules in some ways. It is what it's like. It is. There's rules at the end of it. Whereas the other stuff is very much it's endless.
You think painting?
Well, I think in the end,
it's
it's paint on a canvas or something on a canvas.
yeah. I mean, formally, yes, of course.
Within it, yeah. Ultimately, it ends up as an object.
Yeah.
But with the other stuff, it's endless.
What's endless?
Just what it is and what you can do.
Oh.
Yeah, it's interesting because Jacques Roubaud passed away yesterday. He was in his 90s, the great French poet Jacques Roubaud, and he was connected also to the Oulipo movement. And he once told me that he thinks, in poetry and in painting, there are these rules of the games and these constraints in a way. But Paul, are you painting at the moment?
Not right now. But I've been doing a lot of drawings. So it seems I kind of quit making sculpture, I think. So I make drawings and videos. It's pretty much what I do, and books. So I kind of eliminated a lot of the physical stuff, is physical objects is been reduced. So it's more about video, film, drawings, books, and sculptures a bit over. And also these big sets. I sort of, so there's a change that happened in using the physical world. It just sort of creeped in, and all of a sudden I was there. No more objects, essentially. But I guess the problem is digital storage. It gets really insane.
You also mentioned,
and also ecologically.
but you also mentioned the drawings, because obviously you make so many drawings that you experiment there with AI. You kind of find yourself through AI. I'm not sure if I had understood that before in the car. You mentioned you find yourself, but you through that experiment.
I mean, the AI thing happened, several years ago, and it was just from, like being an observer to it, like making something and watching it, and being shocked by what I got back, like some sort of collaboration where you write a prompt, and then something comes back, and immediately I realized, wow, amazing, and then it was a matter of how do I. First of all, get rid of the censorship that existed online with online formats and create a system where I'm not censored. And
Yet.
That's a big one to deal with that. And so using an uncensored system. And then lately, I don't know whether the two go together, like making drawings in AI. And I've been making drawings in character for a long time, like Lilith Nayez, Adolf and Eva. And it's really the name Adolf and Eva, it's just a costume. It's not, I don't try to act like Adolf. I'm not interested in that. It's not about, I read a lot about Hitler, but I don't care to act like, it's not about that, but the image somehow. And, but so drawing in characters been there since I don't know, the 70s or something, and that's and I talk the whole time I draw it. I talk and it's all about a distraction. It's like drawing from a distraction, drawing in a sense of how I evaluate or how I judge something. So there's this thing of drawing as a character or a persona, but now I've been drawing and using AI to manipulate the scene. So, like, I draw on a platform and then with cameras around, and then that goes into a mixer, which then goes into an AI computer, which then goes to streaming. I don't really know whether, it's weird to think about whether the two go together, right? But you don't, it's that thing where you just go, well, here we go, let's see if it works. Like everything's an experiment, it's all like an attempt at something. And I'm doing it. So, and it goes from the live performance, making the drawing or making the performance, to the prompt, but changing the prompt and then that turns into another way of editing. Like you can edit the situation instantaneously through adjusting the prompt as it's going, or adjusting the material that's going into the system. So, but I'm not sure. Anyway, I'm doing it. I'm making drawings and using AI. We'll see where. Seems interesting, maybe.
Drawing is also essential harmony for you. When we met with Agnes B many years ago, at the late 90s in Paris, you made a lot of drawings. There's a show right now in Paris of a lot of these drawings. And it was interesting because in terms of world building, video games, the idea that, of course, with video games, now more than 3 billion people last year played video games. So what used to be a niche pastime activity has become the lead medium of our time. And in a way, maybe video games could be to our time, or could become to our time, what the novel was to the 19th century, or maybe film to the 20th century. Yet, when we spoke to Ian Cheng, who is also working in that space a lot, he was basically saying it's still much easier for him to kind of develop the characters. And Paul was talking about these characters, he draws actually through just doodles, through drawings. And so I wanted to see, now having seen, looked at these early drawings of yours, what role drawing plays today, if you would agree with Ian, if he continues to.
I mean, I still just fuck around, draw, yeah. even a lot of the films that we've been making now, I mostly just storyboard. I don't write scripts, so we'll draw those. But yeah, it's always fun. It's a good part of the puzzle.
And Jill, for you, drawing?
I don't draw that much. I've drawn all my life, but I don't use it so much. I like to do like scrumbles. How you say,
Scribbles?
Scribbles.
Yeah, you're into that?
Yeah, I love scribbles.
You seem like a scribbler.
Especially when I talk on the phone.
And we do have a sort of a scribble doodle in the images, as you could see. That happened 5 minutes before the panel started. It's going to come again. It's the exquisite curves. Because, on Instagram, I have this project, it's a protest against the discipline of handwriting, but also whenever there is an encounter with several artists, we kind of reactivate the surrealist game of the exquisite curves.
And then he sells it on eBay. Buy it now.
Now, the main thing we wanted to talk about today is actually, of course, first of all, what you could do together, because Jill said maybe, you're doing a band together, but also not only what you could do together, your band, but also unrealized projects. I think it's always interesting. We know so much about architects' unrealized projects. We know very little about even...
Oh, you got to talk about Michael Jackson's house.
Exactly. So I wanted to start with
He
Paul.
has the greatest, one
Paul
of the greatest
has a great unrealized project.
project.
Let's start with Paul.
Yeah. Oh. Well, I tried to buy Never Neverland, yeah. I came really close.
He almost bought Never Neverland.
And then they realized what it was worth.
But he was going to buy, you didn't explain, you were going to buy it, and that was the work.
That was the work, to buy Never Neverland.
Never Neverland, yeah, that was going to be
Yeah.
Paul's magnum opus.
And it came up for sale, and it wasn't very much money. I mean,
And he
yeah,
was
it a lot of
negotiating
money,
with
but not
Tito.
a lot of money, right?
He got into the negotiations with Tito Jackson.
I got into the negotiation of it.
And then
I tried to
Tito
buy-
turned on him.
I tried to buy Santa's Village. That was came close again.
I mean, I feel like that's
Yeah.
it's just the concept is good enough.
Yeah.
Almost.
Any other unrealized projects?
Unrealized projects. I mean, I have. Yeah, they're unrealized projects.
Maybe you forgot. This morning you said you want to do a remake of Crash.
Yeah, I wanted to remake Crash because I didn't think Cronenberg got it. But then I'm kind of, I have a Santa Claus movie I want to make. He's a disease. Santa Claus is a disease. A corporate disease. I think the word corporate is pretty interesting right now. People in suits.
There was also the idea once to draw a straight line across the city in LA. That's a very old unrealized project, no?
I tried it. When I first got to LA, I took a map with a yardstick and drew a line across LA, then tried to walk it.
Really? I don't know about this.
Yeah, you end up in people's backyards, but
You were gonna walk from one end of LA to another in a straight line.
You end up, freeways. And I gave it a shot.
See, that's pretty cool.
But that's a lot. That's in 1970 or something.
But the range of unrealized projects, it's pretty wide because some projects can be too big to be realized. Some projects can be, too small to be realized. Silvio Meirelles always wanted to have a tiny, little cube and have an entire museum empty. It took him like many decades to convince the museum to do it. So that project was too small to be realized. Some projects are too expensive to be realized. Some projects are also too time intense to be realized. Friederike Mayracker, the Austrian poet, She was 95, and she told me I have another century of literature to write. That was time was the issue. Then some projects are utopic. Sia Marjani wanted to connect the moon and the earth with a sculpture. That was kind of unrealizable. Then, of course, censorship can be a reason for an unrealized project. And then Doris Lessing always told me that there is this idea also of self-censorship, that we there are many projects one might want to do but hasn't maybe yet dared to do. So that would be, Doris Lessing called those the self-censor projects. So within this whole broad range, Jill, can you tell us about one or two of your favorite unrealized projects?
So I think I would like to do a video game that is, I could choose, or the person who's in the video game could choose all the people that are in, and they come from real life. But it's a little bit like a remake of 8.5 of Fellini, where he goes into this scene where all his wives and girlfriends and women of his life are in this room, but it would be like with the people that you really want to interact, and you can do anything you want with all of those people, and you can have sex, you can murder, you can cheat, you can marry, and it would be like total freedom, total uncensorship. No one can say no because you decide, and there would be also like a police somehow. So there is some sort of censorship, but that you could also like work that. So that would be the maximum, like how to deal with the authority in the video game. I don't know. I'm just making it up. I have no idea.
Any other unrealized projects?
Another one? Like finally, like get rid of traffic by inventing another way of transport.
Thank you so much. And now, Harmony, your unrealized project.
I don't really, this life is just as all unrealized. I don't have anything specific. Nothing.
But what about the trap?
I'm making that now as an it's an anime. I'm working with the anime. Yeah, making like anime.
But can you tell us about that? Because it's an interesting story, because you had the actors, you had the script, you had the whole thing. It was the biggest budget.
Oh, yeah, it was a nightmare. No, I just had a movie collapse years ago just for a lot of reasons. But it's going to be an anime now. So
it's going to be realized.
Yeah, be realized. I mean, that's the thing, is like a lot of stuff that's not realized, or, and also it's like things, you can start an idea. You can have an idea and it can be unrealized for a really long time, and then after at a certain point you figure it out, and then you can execute. So there's a lot of things that are half made, and then you just have to make them, but it's all unrealized until it's realized.
But don't you live in an unrealized project? I mean, I was in your studio yesterday.
Yeah,
that's the feeling.
Everything.
Every day is an unrealized project.
Yeah, everything, because I go, and that's why I live on the water, because at the end, I can go home and I could stare at the water because it's real. It just feels like I can focus on it. But yeah, everything is unrealized, but it's like, it's all pointing in a direction that that we follow.
And maybe the unrealized project of your band, but have you?
You're on bass.
Yeah.
You're the lead singer?
Of course.
Sure.
No, Hans is.
The manager?
Last question. I see many young artists here, and how many you kind of mentioned your dialogue with Camila Cabello, so I was kind of watching an interview with her last night, and we might talk to her tomorrow here in Miami, and she was actually talking a lot about Rainer Maria Rilke. She was kind of reading, the advice to a young poet, and a book I've also read a lot. And as I see a lot of young artists here, I was kind of very curious what the three of you, what would be your advice in 2024 to a young artist? Paul, maybe we start with you.
Good luck. Advice, I don't know. I think at this point in time, I think maybe I believe in art. Actually, that it's really something. It's something when it deals with the existential, when it deals with what is existence and what we are. And maybe that has something to do. I mean, there is something that, like this kind of talk that we've just had, this thing about a change in whether there's a post-film or creations of worlds. And I was thinking about what Jill was saying about the Unrealized project of being free. And I think that, you know, in a way, we are free as artists, you know. And it could be, you know, should be. And I think there's there's an interesting thing going on right now, and that's the constriction of freedom. And I think the rich don't understand art. And that's a very powerful force right now within the art world or within life. And so my advice is you should, I don't have advice, that's advice.
Thank you, Paul and Jill, your advice. Because you also teach now at the École des Beaux-Arts in Paris.
No, I just was a visiting teacher. I used to teach at UCLA for 4 years. But no, I think it's like, you know, Edith Piaf, she would say, aimer, love. So we were talking earlier with Paul about the muse and the energy muse. So I think it's about finding like a way of finding the right energy in you, which could be like the muse could be a fantasy, could be constructed, it could be a person, or to find the right drive, actually, to put you in desire, to have desire. So when I talk about love, it's about desire. It's about why do you do that? To whom? That's what I think.
Thank you so much. And Harmony,
I think just have fun. I think try to be disruptive. Try to figure it out. Try to, spark some shit. And I think you got to be obsessed. You have to think about what is even art now? Like, I mean, I said it before. I was like, I Show Speed and Kai Cenat are kind of artists, and every time they do a stream, it's a movie, and it's something. So even what is art is, you have to, for kids now coming up, you have to really think about who are the gatekeepers, who do you want to deal with, where are the eyeballs, like what can you do, like what hasn't been done before, what are the different forms, what is your vision. What separates you from everyone else? Does any of it mean anything? Is there a way to monetize? Is there it's not just like advice to an artist. It's like, because it's so big. It's not just figuring it out, like this one thing out. It's figuring, because everything is changing. But I think at its core, you have to be, I don't know, I would say somewhat obsessed. That you have to be obsessed. Mm-hmm. I think to the point where it's not that nothing else matters, but I think you just have to be obsessed.
Thank you so much. I think that could not be a better conclusion.
All right, Miami, love you. 305, represent.
Thank you. Another big round of applause for Harmony, for Jill, for Paul.
Oh, yeah. Right there.